Welcome to the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. This week's episode really sums up what I think is one of the most important things that I wish everybody considered, and that's how to not become a victim of a major disaster. In my documentary film, The Last House Standing, we met several people whose lives were turned upside down by hurricanes, fires, and tornadoes. We heard from experts who talk about how long the recovery takes, with some never getting back to where they were before the disaster. It's life-altering. One of the people I interviewed in the film at the time was the mayor of Malibu, California, Jefferson Wagner, known as Zuma Jay. He's also the owner of Zuma Jay surfboards in Malibu. His house burned down in the Woolsey fire in 2018, and when we spoke recently, he still hasn't been able to finish rebuilding. He has great advice from first-hand experience that everyone needs to hear and learn from. I'm George Siegel, and this is the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. Every week we introduce you to people who are working on real-world problems and providing actual solutions. Tell Us How to Make It Better is partnering with the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services. Jefferson Wagner, a.k.a. Zuma Jay, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon. I guess we're on different coasts, but I first met you after the Woolsey fire, and that was quite an experience for the folks in Malibu. Give us an update how you're doing today. How have you come out of this thing?
Thank you. I'm no longer mayor of the city. Now I'm just a former mayor. I'm moving right along with the rebuild process of my home that I lost in the fire, and I just got planning approval.
Wow. And that's a long time after the fire. Now, you had a very interesting experience that you shared with us. We didn't include it in the movie, The Last House Standing, but it was kind of dramatic. Can you tell us what that was like and what they put you through to get to this point?
Yes, physically, during the fire, the event was recorded by LA County Fire. There's 46 seconds of footage of me defending the house during the fire storm. The house was lost afterwards to the embers landing on the roof and the ladder melting, so I could no longer access the roof to put the fire out. Right now, the building process in Malibu, we have built 120 homes in the city of Malibu. 772 were lost in the 90265 area code.
Now, one of the biggest challenges in disasters, and we've certainly heard this from a lot of people in a lot of places around the country, is when it comes time to collecting the insurance that you thought you had on your house. It's not a slam dunk that Jake from State Farm's not coming out and handing you a check the next day. What was that adventure like for you?
It is an ongoing adventure at this time. I've still been declined the policy by my carrier. It was Allstate. And I had full coverage. I don't even have a dog, and I even had dog bite insurance on the property, and I had paid the policy for 10 years in a row. All this is on in real world, and I had paid it a month early each year, and I paid it in one payment, not monthly payment. So I was declined because they said the house was not insured for enough. It was only 1.5 that I insured the house for, and it's going to cost around $4 to rebuild it. So I'm still in debate with that, but Southern California Edison paid me enough of the lawsuit to start the construction of the home.
Now, there was we were talking at the time, and you had expressed that you thought one of the reasons they made it more difficult for you, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, was you didn't have a mortgage, so they didn't have a mortgage company to fight. You think it would have been different if they had to go up against a financial institution rather than an individual?
Fair enough. Very good kind of idea of what went on. I did not have a mortgage. I had paid it off in 2016. I was mortgage free at 65. And I thought that was what the big goal in life was about here in the U.S., own your own home when you retire. Yes, no mortgage made it easier for them because I didn't have B of A or Wells Fargo or Chase Bank with me in the lawsuit. If I had had their attorneys making demands with a big law firm behind me, it would have been a different outcome. So I had to go procure my own attorney and bank of attorneys and attach my claims to the lawsuit.
So what seems to be just such a recurring pattern is victims get further victimized and life does not get back to normal very quickly. That's one of the things we were stressing in The Last House Standing. We're making a new film pretty soon. And the idea is, how do you avoid becoming a victim? How do you avoid having to live the hell that you and many of your friends and neighbors have gone through, where you're punished by the disaster and then you're punished by the recovery? What would you tell people? What is the takeaway here? What could you have done differently? Or is there nothing? And it's just, sometimes it's just bad luck and people have to dig themselves out.
I'm trying to be brief. There's two remedies to this. The remedy that satisfies us out here on the West Coast in the fire situation, or maybe a potential earthquake situation, and those in the Midwest and the East Coast, which are usually hurricanes and tornadoes or blizzards. So knowing your policy and actually just not signing the document, but actually reading the document, tell yourself, I am going to read my policy, and pick out 5 or 6 spots in the policy that you don't understand and get clarity prior to sending them the check. That's the best remedy I can help you with as a policy holder. The other part is, when the disaster happens, is you have to have a lot of documentation. And the first thing is to get that FEMA number. When you get your FEMA number, you have some reality. Insurance companies have to respond to a FEMA number. That's your disaster declaration number from FEMA. So those two things are quick remedies that would help you out, get out of the situation I was in.
Now, I grew up in Pacific Palisades, which is south of where you guys are. And every year we still had the same fear when the fires would kick in, when the Santa Ana winds would be blowing and that hot and dry. I mean, you look out and you see that ocean, but if the wind is blowing offshore, not helping you much. So what are people doing as they rebuild out there to maybe do it better? Because it seems to keep happening. Maybe not always in the same spot, but it seems to keep happening.
Correct. They always have these great terms, and politicians will tell you, hey, we're going to demand hardening, which means you build a harder home, do harder clearance. Right now, going through this process for myself and the other 700 homes in Malibu, we're having to go through a fuel modification plan that's ratified by LA County Fire or LA City Fire if you're down in the Palisades area or Topanga area. And it's actually recorded on the deed, and it's recorded by the county register that you will do and maintain the fuel modification plan during your rebuild and after you're completed and you get your sign off from certificate of occupancy. So that fuel modification plan, in my case, costs around $6,000 or $7,000 to do with the architect and the engineer, and another $2,000 to ratify it and have it put on the title. So fuel modification, and then the next thing up is they're demanding sprinklering, which I get it. It seems logical, but if you don't have a water supply to your interior sprinklers or your exterior roof sprinklers, it does no good. So some of these things will work, the fuel modification, and some won't. If there's no water supply, there's no sprinklers.
What is fuel modification? I don't know that.
Sure. Fuel modification is the reducing of the plant matter, the organic plant matter surrounding your house. So they have a zone A, zone B, and zone C.
Now I know it. So no palm trees right next to your house, which go up like Roman candles when there's a fire, and people have those open vents in their attics, where the air gets in. It seems like there's a lot of, I just know it under a different term. I've never heard it expressed that way, but that is so important. And even though some of the houses we saw that burned down, they could have done all that. And when that firestorm comes over the hill, there's not much you can do.
No, you can't do anything about the embers from your neighbor's house that didn't have fuel modification, or with the WUI, Wildland Urban Interface, that's WUI. You have huge areas that, 40 to 100 acres that have nobody occupying them, and they're left natural as open space. and those areas burn and they send the embers towards you. The palm trees, we call them California candles. There's certain palms that don't have enough moisture in them, the fan palms and the queen palms. However, the date palms in my situation did not burn because they're fruit producing. They have a lot more moisture in the palm tree themselves. They didn't even burn. So it
Now,
depends on what kind of palm trees you're planting.
it's time for emergency preparedness to go mainstream. Smart, innovative, practical solutions that match your needs. Instinct Ready educates, prepares, and equips the everyday person for disaster. With promo code MAKEITBETTER, you can access comprehensive preparedness courses and premium go bags. Visit InstinctReady.com with promo code MAKEITBETTER today. Preparedness starts at home. Sure. What do you think it is in our human psyche that makes us think it's not going to happen to us, and then these disasters keep happening? Because I know fires are nothing new to California. It seems like every year there's a tragic story or two that comes out of communities that are wiped out. Paradise, which was pretty much at the same time as your fire, I mean, they didn't even have ways out of there. They had no plan for a disaster. Malibu, things kind of just everything fell against you guys. Why aren't we all taking this more seriously? Or do you think people are now? I don't know that people change. They just forget.
It's difficult. They forget over time. For the first couple of years, it was the premier talk in this town. Right now, the talk is about the next fire that's going to come. And I can predict that the next fire will take place will be from Las Flores Canyon, if you Google map, and then head toward the Palisades. It will consume all of Topanga. The last time that area burned was 1993. It's ready for another good cleansing or burning. But the topic won't be around for the next couple of months until the Santa Anas come back.
Yeah, and those canyons, when I was growing up, they hadn't really gone back into some of those and developed them. Now there are so many houses and neighborhoods and communities back there. And I wonder if people think about that when they buy those houses. Are they thinking if they have defensible spaces? Are they thinking evacuation? Are they thinking because I know I live in Florida and a lot of my neighbors have no fear of hurricanes, even though we got brushed by one that would have wiped us out last hurricane season. Are people aware of this, or are they just walking around aimlessly like this is paradise, we're going to live here?
You coined it. This is paradise, we're going to live here. Once you get landed, once you get your mortgage settled, once you get the kids in school, all those wonderful things are what your daily life is about. But they're not thinking of the long-term effect of one of these catastrophic fires. And they will come and they will happen again and again. In 2007, my canyon burned across from me. Only 7 or 8 homes were burned right across from me, probably 500 yards away. And one of those super tankers came in and nailed our neighborhood, and it was just like nothing's going to burn now because we had that FOS check or the red stuff, and it was just done. We had good fuel modification at that point. So some canyons will get away with it and some canyons won't. But if you're in a canyon that you haven't prepared an evacuation plan, how to get your car loaded up quick, are the kids in school, are the kids not in school? If you're not prepared and don't think about that between the months of September and January, then you're naive, and shame on you.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many sad stories of people that lost so much. And I know I've heard some comments where people go, well, fortunately they have money, they can afford it. That doesn't minimize the disaster when your house burns down or all your mementos are gone. You can't replace those things.
No, it's just like back east with the hurricanes and the tornadoes. You lose all that material that you became accustomed to having and sharing with your kids or sharing with your neighbors and having good memories about. When those are all gone, your life is cleansed without your appreciation. I mean, I didn't get to throw anything away that got old. It all burned. And some of my childhood memory, little toys and little trinkets, probably I could fit them in a box 2 feet by 2 feet. That's all I had at my age, but it's gone. And I'll never retrieve those. I think of all the people across our nation and other nations like with the last big earthquake in Turkey and Syria, they lost a lot more lives. In Malibu, we only had 3 people die. 3 or 4 of us were hospitalized, myself one of them. But up in Paradise, we lost 80 or 90 people in one day. So I just do this a lot. And now that I'm so well educated in it, I don't mind sharing that education and that process with others.
Now, another problem that you guys had is a lot of those houses back in the canyons were houses that had been in families for generations. That they're houses that were probably way underinsured. So now your house burns down, and people don't really look into this. You can't just throw your house back up there because it wouldn't cost the same as it cost to build that house 60 years ago when it first went up. That's got to make it even a worse nightmare for a lot of people that never thought they would have to be dealing with this.
That's perfect. You've hit the nail on the head in my situation, and in about 400 to 500 homes in Malibu that still have not been rebuilt, or the applications haven't been turned in. The city did what it could with the planning department. All plans to the original homeowners that lost their homes, and all the plan check fees and every fee that's associated with rebuilding your home was zero for the city. It passed when I was mayor. We just said, if you rebuild your own home, zero costs paperwork wise through the city. That was the best we could do. Unfortunately, when you built a home, I built my home in 90. It cost me around 175 to 250 a foot ballpark. Right now, the quotes are coming in at between 550 and 650 per square foot. The house was insured for this somewhere in between, and I'll make it happen. I'll take a second mortgage out or something. But a lot of older folks my age that lost those homes, and the young people that inherited those homes, didn't insure them for $650 a foot. They were insured for $350 to $400 a foot, like mine was.
And you probably couldn't. I don't know that an insurance company will. Maybe you get a replacement value clause in your contract, but they look at the value of your house and they say, okay, well, this is what we estimate it's going to cost to rebuild it. I mean, I don't know that helps in that situation, especially and a lot of times we interviewed a guy who had some classic collector cars that weren't running, so he didn't have them insured.
Yeah, those possessions is a different part of the contract. I had some artwork from some well-known artists, and that was lost in the fire, but it was named in my policy. It actually was said, well, here's a Hanson from the 1800s. Here's another piece. I had several art pieces, and that was named in my policy, and they didn't even cover that. But I had it on tape with the appraiser walking through going, there is a Hanson. Okay. Done. So I just want to get back to that one statement. You've got to read your policy and make sure that those couple of questions that you have are, when you ratify them, you can take that part of the clause out, Xerox it, make it bigger, and then write down things in it. And if you don't, you'll be in the same situation I'm in.
Insurance is such an adversarial relationship. I mean, it's such a bad relationship. I've had a few good experiences when I've had small claims where they've stepped up. But when you have the big stuff, even if they do, I don't know in fires, but if you ever ding your car or if you have a leak in your roof, they tattoo you on rate increases and penalize you for it. Are they doing that for people with fires as well? Is there some kind of punishment that comes in when they go to reinsure your new house? Because I'm paying for that now.
Yes, in Malibu, my house, the replace value, I had it at 1.5. My insurance per year was around 5,000 to 5,500 at that rate. Everybody that's rebuilt now, the 120 homes or 125 homes that have been rebuilt, for the new rates, they're paying between $10,000 and $15,000 per year. So it's about $1,000 to $1,200 a month to insure a $3 million to $5 million home in Malibu. So yes, the insurance companies have to recoup those funds, and they have to make sure that they can cover their obligations in the future when there are future disasters. That's the name of the insurance premium upgrade. And that's why they can afford celebrity people to do their advertising for them. When you buy insurance and you look at the ads on television, you're paying that premium, and that premium cost is going up. The cost of replacement is going up, and the cost of those actors and all those ads that you see are going up.
It's crazy. And would you say that, do you sense a lot of people are moving away from California? I mean, I know we get a lot of jokes about how Florida is, but people are moving here in droves, even though it's risky. So when we have a disaster, there's going to be a lot more people here. How are things out there?
If you look at the numbers, don't take my perception or my statement, but if you actually look at the numbers, people are leaving California and they're going to Austin in Texas. That's become the new East California, is Austin.
Yeah.
Irving, Texas. There's a couple of cities that are just gathering Californians. A lot of Californians are moving north to Oregon and driving the price of homes up in Oregon. That's where my brother lives. So all these things, you can see that. Arizona, if you look at Scottsdale, some of these nicer homes in Scottsdale, all being consumed by Californians that are getting out of California and moving east. And they'll put up with not seeing the ocean and the perfect weather for a simpler lifestyle.
Yeah, on a beautiful day in California, it's tough to match that, but it's all the other days. Do you worry about earthquakes at all too, or do you figure you've been pre-disastered? It's not going to find you.
The earthquakes, when the big ones come, they're usually in the 6 to 7 to 8 foot 8 range on the Richter scale. Those will do damage. It's usually infrastructure damage. So you'll see bridges fall, freeway bridges that collapse, as we saw up on the Nimitz Freeway in the San Francisco quake. In California, we had an earthquake where the bridges fell on the 5 and the 14 freeway. Those collapses occur in infrastructure. You'll see pipes break, fire hydrants shooting up. But our housing has become so adaptive to to need for the earthquake. To get the insurance, you have to do the earthquake modifications, which I'm going to do. You shake, you wiggle, you move, the cats run, the dogs panic, but you don't see a lot of housing collapses because our housing out here in California is further apart. You don't see a lot of housing collapsing on top of each other as we saw in Turkey and Syria, where one building fell into another. Here, everything's 2 or 3 stories, even if it's a rental operation, it's a condominium complex. It's 2 or 3 floors, and those don't shake as much as something that's 10 to 15 floors. But we do think about earthquakes out here. We just had one a couple weeks ago. It made the news, but there was no damage because we're adaptive to earthquakes. And all the newer homes require earthquake mitigation, which you can shake the heck out of these things. You can go an 8 or a 9 and they'll still stand. You may lose a few windows. You're going to have some damage, but the structures will still stand, especially the modern structure.
Yeah, I was on the top deck of Candlestick Park for the 1989 earthquake. That was the scariest thing I've ever been in. I mean, I thought that whole stadium was going to collapse. And then our hotel collapsed. What happened with some of the roads and bridges there. It's absolutely frightening. Now, our expert that we had in the last house standing, earthquake expert, it's not so much the residential houses as you're saying, although there's a lot of older houses in parts of LA. It's the high rises. He predicted 50 or 60% of the buildings would be uninhabitable if a big earthquake hit there. So, I mean, that's why I prefer a hurricane to an earthquake, because at least you somewhat see it coming. Earthquake, you're just sleeping and boom.
Yeah. And you have collapse, hurricane, tornadoes. Yeah, you see it coming. You got a couple hours notice. Even if you got an hour or two, you got a basement to run into. In a high rise, there's no basement because that's where it's all going to wind up landing. So
Yeah.
We kind of laugh here in Southern California about the Leaning Tower of Pisa in San Francisco, the one building that Joe Montana invested heavily in. It's leaning. It's 3% leaning. It's sinking and tipping. And I mean, who's going to occupy that? I mean, the seismologists are telling you this one's going down. I think it's 70 stories or 60 stories. You could Google it, but it's 3% tilting and dropping as we speak, and it's brand new. I think it's 5-6 years old.
Yeah, you wonder how that happens. We could do a whole other show on the building industry. I mean, hopefully you have a good builder that you're comfortable with for your house. Um, watch them, watch everything they do, because if you don't, that's when they just get sloppy.
Yeah. Yeah, you can learn this stuff. It's all there. Like a show like this, it gives you an idea of what to do, and then you can go deeper into it and follow the construction and make sure the quality assurance is there. And if you have any problems, when the building inspector comes out from the county or the city, just write it down when he's there and say, I have a concern about this, this, and this, and let him address it. That's what I'm going to do. If I have any issues, I'm going to go right straight to my inspector while he's there and I'm paying him to inspect the work. I'm going to say, is this good? Is this good? Is this good? Real easy.
It is, but most people don't. They don't want to be bothered, or they get intimidated by the builder. Like, we don't want you looking over our shoulder. And I encourage everybody, you make sure you're looking over both their shoulders. You make sure that you're watching everything. And as a two-term mayor, you probably saw, it takes a long time to change a rule or a law or an ordinance, but people can do things right away by just becoming their own best advocates.
That's so correct. That's what I'm pushing here in Malibu. When people ask me, quite often the local media comes and asks me questions, and I say, observe, you're writing a check for hundreds of thousands of dollars to these vendors. They want their check. I want surety. And the surety is when the inspector comes, be there. That you should not be intimidated by your investment.
I think they play the bully game. I think that they're like, how dare you question us? We do this all the time. But I've never seen an industry where your work can get destroyed so much, but you still come out and keep building stuff. And it's not really a testament to building something that lasts.
Right. Well, I tell my new contractor, hell, I'm just helping you out. Let's fix it before it becomes something wrong. On the next inspection, when the plumbing inspection comes or the electrical inspection comes, and they see something that you didn't complete right or didn't get done by the last sub, I always blame it on the subcontractors, not the contractor himself, because, oh my goodness, he knows everything. I'd say, hey, this sub didn't do this right, or this sub didn't do that right. And then they can get on your side, or you can get on their side and go vendor fixing before it's all encapsulated and you got a certificate of occupancy.
And whoever the superintendent is, make sure it's not their last job with the company, because they clearly don't care. You want to, that's, and also the day they're putting the drywall up, make sure you're out there, because all the food wrappers and garbage and beer cans and crap that gets thrown into the walls will be with you forever.
And when they're cutting it, all the stuff that they're cutting goes inward, and it's all left there. When I did the first house, I had my own vacuum, my own wet and dry vac, and I did it all as they were there. It took me one day. It was spotless inside. I never had one mouse, one rat, anything in 30 years. Zero infestation from my little neighbors in the WUI, wildland urban interface.
All right. So now you're going to have your own fire department too next time? You had said you have to have BYOB, bring your own brigade, I think was your term.
That's another movie that was done. Bring your own brigade. That was my quote. One day I'll show you that 46 seconds of footage of me defending the property, and you'll see what you're going to have to do the next big firestorm coming through.
All right, final takeaway, Jay. What would you tell people? What's the you did touch on it, but let's hit it again. I'm buying a house. I'm building a house. What's the most important thing I have to think about?
Reading your policies for your insurance, because replacing it will be difficult.
That's great advice. And one of the problems they had here in Florida, some people had flood insurance and homeowners insurance, and the two entities were fighting over who was responsible for paying. So the people that had two policies still had to wait a long time to get their money. So I think it's just, you want to do everything you can to avoid being a victim.
That's the best statement right there. Don't be a victim and a victim. If you're a victim of a natural disaster, there's nothing we can do about it. But don't be a paperwork victim as well.
Is there a date of projection of when your house will be done?
I'm saying about a year. I don't want to go through framing when the Santa Anas start. So right now we're in foundation modification. The caissons are fine. The grade beams need a couple replaced. But once the concrete work is done, then the framing starts. I think about a year from now, I'll be moving in.
All right. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about it. You were great in the film, and you were great today. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Well, I hope we don't have to share it again.
Let's hope. Let's hope. I say that for everybody because it's not worth it. It's not worth going through that.
Yeah, let's be a remedy, not another story.
Exactly. Thanks, Jay. Thank you for joining me today on the Tell Us How to Make It Better podcast. If you've experienced damage from a disaster or have ever had a horrible building or remodeling experience, I would love to interview you right here on the podcast. There's a link to my contact form in the show notes. Fill it out and I'll get in touch with you. And if you liked what you were listening to today, please subscribe so you can listen to future episodes. Share the link and even leave a review. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.